When it comes to Animal Crossing, new features being added are generally well accepted by the community that plays the game. So what was Nintendo thinking? I mean, not really, I'm only half kidding. Over the years, we've seen Animal Crossing really grow into an amazing game franchise, and there's been some really amazing features added in. But every once in a while, a feature that really doesn't work all that well or ends up causing more headaches than fun experiences ends up getting added into the game, sometimes leaving fans just a bit frustrated. Like, here's an easy one. In Animal Crossing City Folk, they added a new type of grass deterioration algorithm that essentially would make the grass on pathways that you most regularly walked or ran slowly begin to deteriorate and turn into dirt. Now, I guess the idea was this would be a natural way of having dirt paths on your Animal Crossing town. However, this ended up just being really frustrating to players overall, as everyone just wanted their island to be perfectly green and grassy, and it became this whole thing where people were afraid to run around, and if you had people come over to your town, you had to make rules telling them that they weren't allowed to run. People were trying to set up their own custom pathways to make things better. Yeah, it really was no wonder that after Animal Crossing City Folk released, the idea of grass deterioration was removed from New Leaf, and even in New Horizons, you can just make the paths however you want to now, and you don't have to worry about ruining your Animal Crossing town or island. All the way back in Animal Crossing Wild World, they introduced the character Lyle, who essentially sells you health insurance so that if something awful happens, you get compensated in bells. Now, the initial plan costs 3,000 bells, and later you can upgrade it for 6,000 bells, and all it does is reimburse you if you get stung by bees or you trip. And honestly, I don't know if that's worth it. You get 100 bells in the mail if you end up injuring yourself, which covers like the bag of medicine, I guess. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't really think that this ever was that useful of a service across the games that Lyle existed in. He would not be brought back in Animal Crossing New Horizons, though he did stick around for quite some time offering his services, which are interesting, but probably unnecessary. Eventually, if you did do the upgraded version with Lyle, he would reimburse you another 100 bells if you managed to buy a counterfeit painting, but that doesn't nearly cover the cost of what a painting costs, so I don't know. This character always felt a little silly and maybe a bit unnecessary. Okay, the next one comes from Animal Crossing New Leaf, and honestly, it's not something that necessarily was a bad idea, just in practice, it really wasn't all that effective. And we're talking about Street Pass in Animal Crossing New Leaf. Now, essentially, Street Pass was the system where if you carried your 3DS with you and you made sure you left it like on sleep mode and you had Street Pass enabled, if someone else had Street Pass enabled and also played Animal Crossing New Leaf, then it would exchange data with the other person's 3DS just randomly on the streets, and then you would have access to look at their house up in this little happy home area. You would be able to save all the houses of people that you pass, and you would even be able to buy from their catalog of furniture in their houses with a limit of 5 items per day. Now, like I said, idea-wise, this was really cool. Execution-wise, it really didn't work all that well. Essentially, even though I brought my 3DS around with me, not living in a major metropolitan area where a bunch of other people maybe have 3DSs alongside Animal Crossing New Leaf, made it so I still pretty much never had another house show up on my Street Pass in the area. I even ended up taking my 3DS with me to college when I was living in the dorm rooms right on the center of campus a year after the game came out, and after all of that, I ended up getting 1 Street Pass on my game. Now, as you can see from the footage, other people have had different amounts of luck, but definitely for the people who weren't as lucky, it kind of ended up being a completely useless feature, and nothing like this returned in New Horizons, though if they would have done some sort of cool area you could go to and visit other people's towns and order from their catalog that either picks people's houses at random, or maybe you can enter a Dodo code like the Dream Suite, it could have been a really cool feature adjustment. Also, in Animal Crossing New Leaf, there was definitely a lot of things to do, but one thing that not a lot of people expected until they ran into the issue was the item limit inside of your house. Even if your house had enough room to fit things like fossils, a lot of players did run into the limit of total items you were allowed to have on display inside of your house, and that was something kind of disappointing for some players. I'm pretty sure this wasn't as much of an issue in previous games unless I'm misremembering things, but for whatever reason, New Leaf seemed to have this extra layer of scrutinizing what you could fit into your house. This next one is both a feature and a character, and it's a Wisp, specifically from Animal Crossing New Horizons, because, oh geez, this guy's annoying. Okay, don't get me wrong. The first time you encounter Wisp, it's fun. It's kind of this little fetch adventure. You go do your thing and you get some random item, but okay, that's cool. If you're starting off your game, it's nice to get a random item every now and again. But when you see Wisp multiple times a week in multiple play sessions, and he's now getting in the way of you trying to terraform your island or build a specific pathway, and you don't even want to bother with him, he ends up being a little bit more in the way of things than he could be helpful in one way or another. I think if he was a character more like Gulliver, that at least gave you a rare exclusive item that you could only get from Wisp, he would be liked a lot more, but the fact that he just gives you some random junk, and a lot of the times it's not even that cool, he kind of became quickly less favorable amongst Animal Crossing players. Also in Animal Crossing New Horizons, the darn Dodo Airport. Don't get me wrong, I love these dodo birds that work in here, and I don't even mind the concept of the airport being introduced for players to come visit your island. It's actually a really cool concept. The thing that I don't like is the process of traveling to a different person's island. There are so many other ways that video games can connect one player to another player in a much more streamlined process than using this airport. First, you have to listen to a bunch of dialogue, answer a bunch of questions, make sure you don't answer the wrong question, enter something, then enter another thing that's very similar again, just for it to look for the islands you want to go to, when honestly, it feels like this whole system could have been streamlined significantly more if they tried to treat the airport more like a menu system and less like a character. I get them wanting to do things immersively, but at this point, it would have been cool if there was just a quick menu that showed you all your friends that had gates open. You could just go there or type in a dodo code. The questionnaire was a bit much. Do you guys remember auctions in Animal Crossing City Folk? No? Me neither. But yeah, Animal Crossing City Folk had auctions where you could apparently try to sell items online. It wasn't really the coolest thing. You'd think it would be a lot cooler than it was, like some sort of marketplace, but it ended up just being pretty mid, to tell you the truth.
You can come in here and you can put things up for auction, and they can come in and they can bid on the bed. So I'll bid on the bed. So I put that up, but this I didn't. So I can come in here and I can do. So Sarah, who's another person who has a save file on the same me, put this up for auction. So I can go in and I can bid. So now if I were to win that auction, that would show up at my house. They would send it to me in the mail and I would go pick it up. So you can sell your items that way. A different way to make transactions.
Also, City Folk was the first Animal Crossing game, and then the last Animal Crossing game, to introduce voice chat, which early on copies of City Folk would include a microphone where you could then talk to the players whose town that you're visiting or are visiting your town of. The microphone wasn't very good. Imagine like a really, really bad Connect microphone, and those already sounded really bad, and then just plug that in, and you're all ready to go. All of your friends can hear you and everything else going on in your surroundings, and you can hear all of them at the same time too. I was playing City Folk when I was like 13 or 14, and I had a group of friends that I made online visiting my town when I was supposed to be cleaning my room, and I got in trouble, and all my friends could hear me getting in trouble, so it was a pretty cool experience. I know it might seem like we're picking on New Horizons, but there still are a couple more little nitpicky things, like Bunny Day. That was just the worst thing right when Animal Crossing New Horizons came out. Everyone was having a good time, and then Bunny Day hit, and all of a sudden, when you're trying to collect wood so you can build structures and get your island going, you're all of a sudden running into these stupid Bunny Day eggs everywhere. And honestly, the egg furniture was okay, but it wasn't something you'd want to use year round. And the fact that there were just so many of these darn eggs everywhere, it became really obnoxious, especially in the first year. So much so that Nintendo had to release a patch during the Bunny Day event and reduce the frequency of the Bunny Day eggs spawning in, because so many fans were struggling and getting frustrated with these eggs interfering with their own Animal Crossing gameplays. In later iterations of Bunny Day, the eggs would be toned down significantly better, but we are always haunted by this darn Zipper T bunny, and I don't know if we can forgive him. And then the addition of breakable tools. Now, axes have been breakable since the beginning, though we never had to really deal with other types of tools breaking, like our shovels or our fishing rods. But with Animal Crossing New Horizons and the addition of crafting, it kind of became a necessity to make you continuously go into the loop of having to recraft things. So all of a sudden we were dealt a hand where we had flimsy tools along with a flimsy axe, which is even funnier because it not only doesn't cut down trees, but it also breaks quicker. I don't know. I don't mind the crafting mechanics being introduced into Animal Crossing New Horizons. I actually really enjoy them, especially the customization side of things. But the fact that not only are the tools breakable, but also the fact that they kind of take a minute to craft and get the version of the tool that you want, it becomes more tedious, and essentially a lot of players just started resorting to buying the tools from the store every time they broke instead. Even the gold level tools still break after a while, so there's no escaping the fact that your tools are going to break inevitably. Another big one that Animal Crossing fans definitely are not fans of are some of the things that happen on the newest Switch version of the game, essentially console locking your island, where you can have just a single island on your Switch. It doesn't matter how many profiles you have on your Switch, it doesn't matter how many copies of Animal Crossing you have for the Switch, how many physical copies you have. If you're playing on a Switch, you get one island and that's it. And it's very strict about it, which definitely isn't all that great if maybe you share your Switch with someone else. I mean, in a way, we all want to have our own islands. I know the idea is to have multiple people share islands, but there's nothing better than being able to trade your items with friends across different islands, exchange fruit, visit other islands and see what they're up to over there. And I feel like the limit of one island per Switch is a bit strict. This wasn't the case back in the DS days, as you could have multiple cartridges, but the Switch is just different. Even more to add to that, in Animal Crossing New Horizons, only one player gets to be the resident representative, who gets to make the crucial decisions about the island and how the island will be set up, and has a lot of the early tasks in the game, which means if you are the second player, you are kind of getting a limited experience of Animal Crossing, unlike the same experience that player one has. And even if you could potentially become a huge Animal Crossing fan, you don't realize that potential that you're missing out on by not getting to be the resident representative. New Horizons also introduced co-op mode, which is a great addition. This is something that we are huge fans of. We think that this was cool, but the co-op mode is incredibly bare bones. Because the game always shares the screen with one player and they didn't opt for doing something like a split screen type setup, the second player is incredibly limited to what they can do while playing in this co-op mode. Essentially, they can use some tools and run around. However, there's always a leader player required. Now, it is nice you can switch who gets the leadership role at any given moment, but if they were going to do a co-op mode, they should have just gone all in and given us a true co-op mode. I don't feel like it would have been an impossible task to put into a game like Animal Crossing, but this kind of just ends up being chalked up as, yeah, there's co-op mode if you have a little sibling or a kid that wants to join in and play that doesn't understand the depth of the game themselves just yet. And that's fine, I guess, but it would have been nicer if they made something more accessible for everyone to enjoy and not just bring up another co-op in Mario Odyssey where player 2 gets to be Cappy type situation. Also, I've never been a fan of La-Di Day. It was a holiday that was introduced in Animal Crossing Wild World. It essentially was a holiday where all of the villagers would try to sing to you a new town tune, and then you could either tell your villager that it was bad and if they needed to try harder, which would make them upset, which kind of made you feel bad, or you could take the song and then make it your town tune. I wasn't a fan of this. I always like to pick my own town tunes and make them myself, and I always felt kind of bad making my villagers feel like their singing wasn't adequate enough. But I run a tight ship here in my town, and I wasn't going to settle for just nothing, so I ended up upsetting a lot of villagers. This next next one might be a little bit more controversial, but I still wanted to include it on the list. Animal Crossing New Leaf introduced retail, which was a replacement to the Tom Nook store that you typically had in your town itself. And while the prices were good and you could sell stuff for a higher rate, I felt like other than just buying items that are in the store, the whole idea of reselling things and having other villagers come and buy your stuff just never really worked. It either would take too long, you would price it weirdly, and it just ended up being a option or service in the game that was mostly underused by players. I don't remember putting too many things on consignment as it just took too long, or I would try to hike up the price hoping someone would buy something, and only rarely could I ever convince someone to buy something of mine. I don't know, I just never felt like this was lucrative enough to warrant the effort and time it took to get something sold in the consignment system, though the rest of retail was nice, I guess. I mean, we could customize some things, which was a first for the series, but yeah, the consignment part of retail, not a big fan. And then in Animal Crossing City Folk, they introduced the option to choose to wear the face of your Mii instead of the regular Animal Crossing villager look. And I don't know, apparently this was something that they even considered just implementing across the board for Animal Crossing, getting rid of the old faces. I'm glad they didn't, but there was just something always weird about the Mii character face instead of a regular Animal Crossing villager face. It just seemed a little unsettling. So what did you think? Did we miss something that was really awful? Let us know in the comments down below. Make sure you are subscribed with notifications on for more videos like this. We'll see you all next time with our next upload.